Guys, picture this, a quiet suburban street in Whispering Pines, North Carolina, where every lawn is trimmed to military precision. Every mailbox matches the HOA color chart. And the only thing louder than the leaf blowers is Karen Hargrove's voice when she decides you've broken Rule 47B. You know the type, the kind of neighborhood where peace is enforced at gunpoint or at least at $500 fine point. And right in the middle of it all sat Ivy Rivera, 30 years old, financial risk consultant who worked from her home office in yoga pants, minding her own damn business. But to Karen, Ivy was public enemy number one. It was the annual Whispering Pines Thanksgiving potluck, held in the community clubhouse like some twisted HOA family dinner. String lights twinkled, tables groaned under casseroles, and the air smelled like pumpkin spice and passive aggression. Karen stood at the head table in her signature outfit, a bright magenta blazer 2 sizes too tight, gold buttons straining over her belly, pearls that probably cost more than half the residents' mortgages, and a clipboard she clutched like it was the 10 Commandments. She was the HOA president, self-appointed queen of petty tyranny, and she loved nothing more than reminding everyone who wore the crown. "Everyone, please," Karen announced, tapping her crystal punch glass with a spoon the way a judge bangs a gavel. Her voice dripped that fake sweet southern drawl that somehow still sounded like nails on a chalkboard. Before we dig in, we have some truly magnificent news. Truly magnificent. She reached over and patted the shoulder of her favorite resident, a perfectly coiffed woman named Leah, who had just upgraded her backyard to approved perfection. Leah and her husband finally finished their outdoor kitchen, fully compliant, of course. 5-burner grill, marble counters, the works. And not just any kitchen, it passed inspection on the first try. A collective murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. Karen beamed like she personally built it. That's what happens when you follow the rules, folks. Real roots. Yes. Her eyes, small and mean behind designer glasses, slid across the room and landed on Ivy like a heat-seeking missile. Unlike some people who think the covenants are optional, the room went quiet. The longest table, squeezed between a plastic cornucopia and a drafty window. She'd shown up because the HOA bylaws technically required attendance, and she'd learned the hard way that skipping meant triple fines. She wore a simple black sweater, no makeup, hair in a messy bun, the exact opposite of the step-forward wives around her. Karen wasn't done. She continued, voice rising with theatrical pity. Ivy here still hasn't paid her last 3 violation notices. Trash cans visible after 8 p.m. unauthorized holiday lights last year. And can you believe it, that fence she put up without approval? $300 each. Ivy, but patience has limits. The table chuckled. Devastating laugh Ivy had heard for 2 years straight. The implication was crystal clear. Ivy was the neighborhood charity case, the drifter who couldn't even keep her yard, Whispering Pines, ready. Leah smirked. Needs a little guidance. We could even help her find a real job instead of that laptop thing she does all day. Ivy took a slow sip of water. Ice cubes clinked. The gig economy jabs, the get a real career lectures, the not-so-subtle suggestions that she move somewhere cheaper. They had no idea. He had quietly built a 6-figure consulting practice helping companies survive liquidity crises. She turned down salaried offers that would have paid less than her freelance rate. She lived in this cookie-cutter HOA on purpose. Low overhead, quiet streets, perfect cover. While everyone assumed she was scraping by, her bank account said otherwise. But she stayed silent. Because she was collecting receipts. Every nasty email, every selective fine, every time Karen waived a rule for her friends and hammered it on everyone else. Ivy had folders, timestamps. She was building a case the way she built financial models, slow, precise, and lethal. Karen leaned forward, bosom threatening to spill out of the magenta blazer. Honestly, Ivy, at your age, you should be stabilizing. Buying a Real house instead of renting the starter home. When I was 30, I already had equity. Roots. She said the word like it was holy. Maybe it's time you sign the new compliance agreement we're passing around tonight. It's just a formality. Protects the community from, well, people who don't pull their weight. A manila envelope slid down the table toward Ivy. Inside, a thick waiver releasing any future claims against HOA reserve funds, plus a confidentiality clause with a $250,000 penalty for talking about internal matters. Karen smiled the smile of someone who thought she'd already won. Ivy looked at the document, and for the first time in 2 years, she smiled back. The potluck chatter died down. Forks hovered midair. For a second when she saw Ivy's expression. Not anger, not tears, but the calm surgical look of someone who had just decided the game was over. Karen, Ivy said, voice steady and carrying across the room like she was in a boardroom, not a clubhouse full of potato salad. Appreciate the concern. Really? I sign anything. Maybe we should all be transparent. You love transparency, right? Real community values and all that. Karen's pearls shifted as she straightened. Ivy, dear, this isn't the time for one of your little internet rants. Just sign so we can enjoy dessert. Ivy stood up. She walked to the projector screen they use for HOA slideshows, the one currently looping pictures of perfectly compliant yards and Karen shaking hands with the mayor. Ivy plugged in her phone and lit up with a crisp 4K drone video. It wasn't a yard tour. Downtown Charlotte, gliding straight into the penthouse of the Avery Tower, 3,200 square feet of glass and marble, rooftop terrace overlooking the Blue Ridge. Ivy's voice, calm and professional, narrated over the footage. This is my actual residence. Purchased cash 7 months ago. No mortgage. And yes, Karen, I still live in Whispering Pines because I choose to. Low overhead. The room sucked in a collective breath. Leia's fork clattered of undercooked turkey. Ivy swiped, filled the screen. Purchase price, $2.4 million. Cash to close, $2.4 million. Buyer, Ivy Rivera. I've been a financial risk consultant for 6 years, Ivy continued. My hourly rate is higher than most of your monthly HOA dues. I turn down 6-figure salaries because I make more on my own. So when you call my work that laptop thing, Karen, you're not insulting me. You're just advertising how little you actually know about the people you find every month. She looked straight at the camera, straight at every resident watching. And while we're being transparent, I've also been recording every single enforcement action for the last 18 months. Selective fines. Dues funneled into accounts that don't match the public ledger. I have it all time-stamped. If anyone wants to see. Karen laughed, a high brittle sound. This is ridiculous. You can't follow simple rules. Sign the waiver, Ivy.
Very suspicious indeed.
Ivy picked up the manila envelope, ripped it cleanly in half, and dropped the pieces on the table. I'm not signing anything that lets you hide what you've been doing with the reserve fund, Karen. And I'm definitely not signing anything that mentions a Vail family trust you've been pretending doesn't exist. The word landed like a grenade. Karen's mouth open and closed, genuinely scared. The potluck was officially ruined. You could hear the ice machine humming in the kitchen. No one touched their food. Gripped the edge of the head table. Magenta blazer suddenly looking cheap under the fluorescent lights. You have no idea what you're talking about, she hissed. The Vail Trust is it's depleted. Old accounts. Business. Ivy tilted her head. You tried to make me sign lists on specified assets and carries a $500,000 gag order. If it's depleted, why the muzzle, Karen? Why the forged letters returning correspondence marked recipient deceased? Gasps rippled through the crowd. Leia, Karen's golden child protege, looked like she might faint. Karen's voice cracked.
What I was owed in the clubhouse.
He left me with nothing.
What are you gonna do about it?
At that exact moment, 3 sharp knocks echoed from the clubhouse door. The room froze. 9 p.m. on a Sunday. The knocks sounded official, heavy, deliberate, the kind of knock that doesn't wait for permission. Karen's face drained of color. She looked like she'd seen a ghost wearing a $5,000 overcoat. "Don't open it," she whispered, but her voice carried. "Ivy, do not open that door." Ivy walked over anyway. Cold November air rushed in, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and overdue justice. Standing on the threshold were three people who did not belong in Whispering Pines. In the center, a tall silver-haired man in his late 70s leaning on a polished black cane like it was a scepter. Charcoal wool coat, cashmere scarf, steel gray eyes that had clearly closed more business deals than Karen had issued fines. To his left, a sharp-suited woman with a leather briefcase. To his right, a quiet aide in scrubs. The old man looked past Ivy, straight at Karen. His voice was gravel and authority. "Hello, Marianne." Karen, or Marianne, apparently staggered back.
Dead.
You're dead." The man smiled without warmth. "Dead in the stories you tell, Karen. But as you can see, I'm quite inconveniently alive. Harrison Vale, of Whispering Pines. And unfortunately for you, your father." The silence that followed was so complete you could hear the string lights buzzing. Harrison Vale stepped inside, cane clicking like a metronome, counting down Karen's empire. His lawyer in her briefcase with the sound of a judge's gavel. "Mr. Believe," Harrison addressed Ivy's quiet father figure, who had been sitting in the corner, looking increasingly confused. "This file contains 30 years of return checks, forged death certificates, and correspondence your daughter-in-law, your HOA president, marked recipient deceased, so she could intercept funds meant for the community reserve in her own pocket." Doug took the folder with shaking hands. Page after page showed cashier's checks made out to the HOA trust, cashed by Karen, deposited into personal accounts. Letters from Harrison begging to see his granddaughter. All returned in Karen's jagged handwriting. Karen tried to rally. He wanted to control everything. Harrison didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Money like a weapon, Marianne. I offered educational trusts for residents' children, healthcare funds, proper maintenance reserves. You demanded blank checks for your lifestyle and threatened to poison everyone against me if I didn't comply. So I became a ghost. Community was anonymously, until I saw the audit query from one resident who refused to be bullied." He looked at Ivy, odd for half a second. "Hello, Ivy. Been reading your quarterly reports for years. You never needed my money. I'm just here to make sure the truth finally lands."
Mr. Vale, I'm glad you think so.
Karen lunged for the torn waiver pieces on the table. "She has to sign. The trust will collapse. They'll take the clubhouse, the roads, everything." Harrison picked up one torn half and read aloud. "Irrevocable waiver of beneficiary rights, strict confidentiality, liquidated damages of $500,000. He removed his reading glasses slowly. "You tried to trick a resident into signing away her legal claim to the very fund you've been looting. That's not just a violation of HOA bylaws, Marianne. That's embezzlement. Forgery."
Miss Glickman,
Step forward.
due to blatant
"We've already filed with the
disregard for
state.
rules, you are hereby
Forensic audit begins tomorrow.
disqualified from the competition."
Karen Hargrove is removed as trustee and president effective immediately." The potluck had become a courtroom. Residents who had spent years nodding along to Karen's rules now stared at her like she was a stranger. Leia, the golden child who had benefited from every waived fine, started crying quietly. "Mom, you told me Grandpa was a monster. You told me he beat you." Harrison's voice softened only for her. "She needed a villain to keep control, child. The cage is easier to hide when someone else is feeding you through the bars." Karen was unraveling in real time. Hair coming loose from its helmet of spray, mascara running, magenta blazer suddenly looking ridiculous. "I did it for the community. For us. I paid for the new playground. I kept property values high." "You kept your property values high," Ivy said quietly, "while finding single moms for dandelions and letting your friends build unpermitted additions. I have the spreadsheet, Karen. You didn't protect the neighborhood. You protected your narrative." Harrison turned to the room. For tonight, Karen receives a modest monthly stipend, enough to keep her off the street, but no control, no access to capital, and she will live in her own house as a tenant of the new trust. The new trustee, he looked at Ivy. Ivy Rivera, who actually understands risk, numbers, and not using power to hurt people. Ivy exhaled. One. I just want the rules to apply to everyone. No more selective enforcement. No more lies. Be what it was supposed to be, a community, not a kingdom. Karen slumped into a folding chair, sobbing into her hands. I just wanted respect. I just wanted them to look up to me. Ivy walked over and, for the first time in 2 years, spoke without the mask. Respect isn't something you demand with fines and forged documents, Karen. It's something you earn by telling the truth. Even when it makes you look small. The cold night air poured through the open clubhouse doors. Harrison placed a heavy, warm hand on Ivy's shoulder. You held the line, kid. Ivy looked out at the perfectly lit streets of Whispering Pines, the same streets she'd driven down every day, pretending to be the broke neighbor so she could watch the machine work. I prayed for one day where the neighborhood could just be normal. No fines, no fear, no performance. I thought that meant keeping my mouth shut. Turns out I just needed the truth to come knock. She turned back to the room, and residents were already whispering about new board elections. Karen sat alone, stripped of her clipboard and her crown. For the first time, she looked small, just a scared woman who had built her entire identity on control and lost it the moment someone refused to play along. Harrison nodded toward the door. Dinner's over. And that, guys, is how one quiet resident with a laptop and a backbone brought down the most feared HOA president in North Carolina. Karen lost her title, her slush fund, and most importantly, her illusion that she was untouchable. The fines stopped. And Whispering Pines finally started feeling like a neighborhood instead of a police state. Ivy didn't gloat. She just went home to her perfectly ordinary house in the perfectly ordinary cul-de-sac, poured herself a glass of the good wine she could finally admit she owned, and watched the stars over the Blue Ridge from her balcony in Charlotte the next weekend. Because the best revenge isn't loud. It's quiet competence that keeps receipts and the truth that eventually shows up on your doorstep wearing a cashmere scarf and a smile that says, game over. Sometimes the biggest flex isn't flashing your penthouse. It's letting the people who underestimated you watch their entire house of cards collapse in slow motion while you sip water and wait for the knock. And that, my friends, is justice in HOA America. Thank you for listening. Let's see, how many of you are currently living in Karen country? Like, subscribe, and remember, the truth always compounds better than interest. See you in the next one.
Camping.